From Cuba to America, from Jehovah's Witness to atheism. And then from all of that to going to college and rooming with two Christians, one an evangelical and the other a Catholic, where this person's conscience was pricked and his moral ideology is challenged. Would he convert to evangelical Christianity or to Catholicism? Furthermore, how would this individual overcome his year struggle of impurity and secular indoctrination? This person needed a miracle, and he indeed did receive one. Meet Kevin, a young man whose spiritual journey into Catholicism was nothing short of divine intervention, when all the cards were stacked against him. He is currently an aspiring Catholic apologist with a growing YouTube channel called Since 33 AD, where he charitably defends the faith and helps non-Catholic Christians understand the Catholic faith more. If you've clicked on this video, please stay until the end to see how God directly works in the lives of those who need him the most. Please like and subscribe and consider becoming a member. Thank you.
Yeah, I went to college right after high school, and I was roomed with my roommates were a Catholic and an evangelical. Both of them were Christian since they were children, since they were born. And I was there for 2 years with them and kind of debating back and forth, talking about different issues, mostly like political and moral issues that we disagreed on. I would always kind of I was very staunch and very atheist, whatever. So I would always hold a grudge. I mean, we'd still be friends, but I would always kind of hold an internal grudge against them. Whereas they would always be very friendly towards me, even if we disagreed on important topics, very charitable towards me. Even one of them had we were very young. So it was right after high school. And one of them had a little bit of a hygiene issue. And he got made fun of a lot this one day, a lot by a lot of other, students who were living around this and whatever. And he dropped it right away. He was a little bothered at first. Obviously, he was a little humiliated, but immediately he especially the person who was making fun of him and kind of getting the whole group to make fun of him. He never held a grudge. It was always nice to him. And I just made, wow, these Christian people who I think are very, bigoted or whatever, are clearly not that. They're clearly do have some sort of joy in their heart that supersedes any other affliction that they may experience in life. So,
right, yeah, it's awesome. What a witness, right? Because I bet in retrospect, you're as a Catholic Christian, you're like, wow, Christ calls us to not only pick up our cross, but blessed are those who are persecuted in my name, and to turn the other cheek, to love your enemies. And they didn't just preach that, right? They actually lived it out, and that probably spoke volumes to you and to your heart, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Definitely was a moment of witness. He wasn't even Catholic; he was the evangelical guy. But even then, I mean, we're still pretty good friends to today. So,
oh, that's great. That's great that you guys are still friends. So let's go back to your childhood and adolescence, where you were growing up. Now it was you and your mom, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much my mom and my father separated very young when I was very young. So I didn't really get to know my father a lot. It would be like a split custody or whatever you call it. So I would visit him sometimes, but mostly it was my mom raising me. She tried her best. She worked very hard, worked more. She never worked more than one job at a time, but she did work very odd hours. Like she'd leave at 3 a.m. at times. And come back, she'd leave at 3 a.m. and come back at 4, which is a lot of working hours. And she always, I always had food on the table, thankfully, a roof over my head. I even got to experience going to, Disneyland when I was growing up, every year for my birthday. So she really worked hard, even though she was a single parent, to really make sure I could live a normal American childhood while I was growing up and still in elementary school, yeah.
Now, not to put the cart before the horse, but looking back, how do you think the way your mom took care of you and loved you and put in that extra effort, I'm sure your resources and means were limited, how did that affect you growing up and becoming the man that you are now, your relationship with your mother?
Yeah, so unfortunately, my mom didn't really she wanted me we were raised I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and so she wanted me to have that fundamental she wanted me to have a foundation in like biblical ethics, right? You know, to love your neighbor, to not lie, to not steal. And that was primarily the reason that she did it. But after I turned 10, she kind of just we stopped really practicing being Jehovah's Witness, and she kind of just let me decide for myself, which is a whole different story of how I basically became atheist. But at the very least, I was kind of aware of the general Christian story and general, quote unquote, good ethics. And obviously, that in itself isn't going to save you,
Right.
but it is going to keep you out of trouble at least.
Right. So why at 10? Was it just arbitrary? Or I mean, did something happen in your
I
guys'
don't know.
lives?
I have no idea. I mean, I was only
Okay.
10, but that is the time when we stopped, congregating. And looking back, she would always just say, "Yeah, when we reached that age, I wanted you to choose for yourself. I didn't want to impose a religion on
Oh,
you."
okay. Now, why did you go the route you went, you think, looking back? So, lukewarm Jehovah's Witness, or you guys went when you could, and then your mom gave you that ultimatum, hey, why don't you decide for yourself? Kind of maybe explain maybe why you didn't go to Islam or Christianity, but actually into atheism.
Yeah, I mean, I was only 10, so it's not like I'm gonna go to congregation by myself, but I still kind of believed for a while, still I wouldn't like pray regularly, I wouldn't read the Bible regularly, but I would mention God here and there. I would still mention, say his name like Jehovah, which is obviously very said very frequently in the groups of Jehovah's Witnesses. And here and then I would just kind of I would have a vague habitual notion of that God exists, and that that he sent Jesus Christ. Well, obviously they don't believe that he's God, and that general idea.
Right.
But it wasn't until I entered like, middle school and then high school where really the world got to me. It was a public school. So obviously, if you have I had a foundation in uh, not Christianity because it's not real Christianity, but general, biblical principles. But I wasn't practicing that. So really the world won me over. And eventually I just started, I thought I was extremely based and super smart. It's like, oh, science disproves God and this and that. We don't have any proof for God and whatever. So eventually after several years I became at least a self-proclaimed atheist.
Right. Did you have any encounters or experiences with Christians in middle school or high school when you were in this atheistic phase?
Not really, no.
Okay.
There was actually one of my friends who he was Christian, but he was not very it's not that he was lukewarm, but uh he wouldn't talk about it as much. So it was just kind of we got along just fine. And he also sometimes I mean, he was also in high school. He was very young, so I'm not trying to blame him. We were younger than like 17, 16. But he would also just like I would make like a secular joke and he'd also laugh along. So I didn't think that he like that it was that strong.
Yeah. So these basic biblical principles, do you think, like you said, they kept you out of trouble, but they didn't really, prompt you to grow in virtue per se? Is that kind of how it worked for your adolescence and teenage years?
Yeah, I think like something that like stealing would have been unthinkable to me. I think, just because of maybe having that biblical foundation. But maybe I just was more for the consequences. I'm not really sure. Definitely when it comes to purity, sexual immorality, that was definitely out of the table, especially being coming from a Hispanic background. The Hispanic culture, especially with Christianity and specifically Catholicism, it's very cultural. It's not actually they
Yeah.
don't take it to the heart. So you baptize your kids because that's just what you do. And unfortunately, in several Hispanic countries, a lot of priests don't actually make the effort to make sure that the parents are actually going to raise their children in the faith. So my family unfortunately suffers from a lot of divorce. I can barely name like a woman in my family who's still with her husband and that they didn't split up. Very bad sexual ethics. A very strong promotion of what we would call hookup culture, which is eventually what I fell to really during high school. It was just really, really, really bad. The way that my family, even though I was raised that way as Jehovah's Witness, once I became a teen, I realized it was more they just wanted me to stay out of trouble, but it wasn't. They didn't really understand the importance or really the gravity of sin, and the I guess they had the law but not the spirit, right?
Mhm.
So
So there was some elements of maybe hereditary in your environments, the Hispanic culture, but was there something more that kind of lured you into um, the sexual immorality and the hookup culture? Because you mentioned that, oh, stealing, unthinkable. But then why do you think this other vice, for instance, was maybe more attractive or not as consequential, maybe? Do you know why?
It's just so many factors. I mean, even unfortunately, even like the young ladies, uh, the young ladies at the time, they would also be into that. It was a very, very flirtatious, very flirtatious, I guess. A culture of a lot of flirting, you could say, among young people. And obviously, like I'm a much older adult now. I'm not that old, but I'm saying like, um, when I was younger and I was in my mid to maybe later teens, it's a culture full of flirting, full of people just kind of want to you know they want to live the thrill, and they just kind of love that. So really both sexes are engaging in that, unfortunately. Even if it doesn't really mean anything, even if it's not going to go anywhere. It's also the music, the rap music specifically was really bad, but just in general the music that was listened to. Also Hispanic, like Hispanic hip hop, Hispanic I guess pop, you could say, is extremely vulgar, extremely, I mean, it's just all around you, right? um you really can't escape it. You really can't escape it, especially in a public school, in the Hispanic, I guess, community, especially in Florida, which is where I was growing up. It's inescapable. So like I remember a few. I wasn't friends with them, but I remember like a few religious people who I could tell were very religious, and they were raised that way. They were just, I mean, you talk to them, they were just like, they seemed like aliens because they talk very low, very softly, very, and they always had a smile on their face. They're very joyful, whatever. And I wouldn't really judge them, but I would just be like, "Ah, that's kind of weird. I would never want to do that." And but they also would kind of be more to themselves. They wouldn't really fit in. Not because people made fun of them, but they just wouldn't mix
Yeah.
in with the group well. I know I've said it a lot, but it's just inescapable, at least in the culture that I was growing up with.
So obviously it was hard for you being like inundated in this environment, this milieu. You were absorbed into secularism, right? I mean, but you were at a public school, your mom allowed you to make the decision for yourself. And so that kind of faded away in terms of having, a robust faith or whatever. So you probably needed a miracle or some sort of divine intervention for you to get out of this culture, this loop, this whole problem of, licentiousness, right?
Yeah, I mean, and a miracle did happen, and we'll get to it eventually. And I don't mean like a miracle, like I walked on water or I saw
Right.
somebody walking on water, but it was more of an invisible miracle. But it's just it's amazing how Christ's grace really transforms you. It's really a 180,
Mm,
because I will still be looking through my old, Google Drive, whatever, or store like cloud photos or whatever, and I'll have memes saved, or I'll have things written in my notes that just completely like make me, sometimes make the sign of the cross of how vulgar it is. But you're
wow.
just extremely desensitized. And think about it. I was 16, 17, 18,
Yeah.
so really it was before that. It was like 14, 15 really is when it started. But I was extremely young. I was in my teens. And it's just, you're so desensitized. You think this is normal. You kind of speak this vulgar way about things you might want to do, about you just make jokes like that are just totally normal for you. They're normal for you. You don't see anything wrong with them. And it, just looking back now, thankfully, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was really headed towards hell. And thank you, Jesus, for saving me from that. But it sucks to know that there are people still there. Unfortunately, some of my quote unquote, high school friends, and from what I've noticed, I don't obviously interact with young people, but like the more whenever I do go out and I see younger people who are maybe in middle school age, just see them around with their parents, entering high school age, it's getting worse. Like it's getting younger and younger. Like
Mm,
you just see, you're out, you see a family, and there's like a freaking 11-year-old girl who's like dressed in very exposed way. When I was 11, it was not happening that early yet.
yeah.
Secular culture had not invaded. It wasn't that bad, at least from what I can remember. It was more like, you get into your 14, 15, whatever. I'm in my 20s now, but it's getting, you just notice it. It's unavoidable. Where really you have, when you think of, like, for example, you go to the beach and you see you imagine, like, there's women who are dressed immodestly. You have like 10-year-old dressing like that now, and it's
Eh,
getting really bad. But yeah, just looking through my old notes and photos, I really used to laugh at stuff, used to talk a certain way that is just repugnant to me right now. And I think it's really, because of Christ's grace, obviously. But Um, I don't know. It's like two total opposites, really. But we
Yeah.
can talk about it. What really, how it was changing, you know?
No, that's great. I think, what our Lord is looking for is a real transformation and a real conversion, not just, I don't know how non-Catholics look at converts into the Catholic Church, what they must be feeling and experiencing. It's not just intellectual. It's not just, well, I'm going from this ecclesial communion to this church and that's it. I mean,
Mhm.
when you can actually experience Christ and his grace, that actually transforms you. And then you, like you said, you look back at your old self and it's just complete repugnancy. It's crazy. You can actually see the manifestation of the effects of grace, how it's a 180. But I do want to mention one thing. I do appreciate how you carry yourself online. I mean, I know you have a YouTube channel, but you're on X as well. And you engage with a lot of non-Catholic Christians. And from what I've seen, it's been nothing but edifying in how you discourse with Protestant Christians. And I'm wondering if, your old self when you were 16, 17, 18 or whatever, if you were to carry yourself that same way, or if it would have been just starkly different in how you interacted with other people that had different sets of beliefs, ideologies, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been, and I fail a lot, so I'm not obviously perfect or anything, but generally I am very level headed. I am very respectful, and oftentimes charitable. But I've always been very respectful in general, always towards my superiors, always towards professors, very kind. I've always wanted what's best for people, even if what I thought was best for people at some times when I was not religious, when I was not Christian, really would have sent them to hell. But in general, I've always cared about people. Um, and yeah, like you would have seen me, and everyone, no one in my childhood, especially my professors, had anything but good things to say about me. I never uh, never disrespected anybody, never really violent, whatever. And so, but I think that just goes to show you, you can appear virtuous from the outside, and that
Right.
doesn't mean you're going to heaven at all. Because I mean, even then I was had a very inappropriate, dispositions. I would even say struggle because I wasn't pushing back, but struggled with purity and stuff like that. But I guess being cool headed and respectful, or whatever. It's just the way I was raised. My mom really did, I guess, do a good job in that, at least.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then after high school, you go to college and have some experiences there. Do you maybe want to elaborate on some things that happened there that led you and prompted you towards converting to Catholicism?
Yeah, so I mean, I would have called myself an atheist in college, though sometimes I would have like probably said, "Oh, maybe agnostic, whatever." And really, that's when I started paying attention to politics more. When I was in, really, it was after, because near the end of my high school years, that's when like the whole Black Lives Matter thing started. So I started paying more attention to politics. I wasn't like super on board with Black Lives Matter. I've always actually been like very pro police, and I was like, yeah, like it's retarded to say that you don't need police or whatever. So I was never like that. But that did get me to start paying more attention to politics, which I would actually just kind of buy a lot into what the left leaning media used to say a lot. I wasn't like a fan of Trump or whatever. Not that I am now. I mean, now I'm just Catholic, so I don't really go.
Mhm.
I'm not like conservative or liberal. I'm just Catholic.
Mm.
Um, but so I don't hate Trump now, but I'm not like a Trump fan. But like back then, I really did not like Trump because I would believe everything that was said about him. And I always thought like people were maybe racist or homophobic or whatever. Um, and yeah, so that began a lot of arguments with my roommates in our dorm room, and we would go back and forth. The evangelical, he really didn't like getting into the weeds of stuff, so he was very simple minded. He's still a very simple minded man. God bless him. I love him. He's a very joyful person.
Awesome.
But the Catholic, he was very well read in like Thomism, very well read in Aristotelian philosophy, and also not just philosophy in general, like metaphysics or whatever, but also like social philosophy.
Okay.
So he gave me a run for my money. He would definitely push back with good arguments. He made me think, and I would just get mad, not like at him. I wouldn't start yelling at him, but I would just like get pissed off in my mind and whatever. But I'd go back and think about it. and I started changing my mind on a lot of things. The last thing really for me was, purity. That was really the last thing that I really, uh, I guess, did not practice. But things like, like the whole Black Lives Matter thing. It's not that I supported it, but I would like, yeah, whatever. We have racist, there's an abundance of racism in the country or whatever. And I was like, yeah, eventually I was like, that's retarded. Like that's just overblown. Then eventually I realized, stuff like, I don't know, freaking just the general conservative way of life, right? Uh, it's okay to want to conserve your culture. There's nothing intrinsically racist about that, stuff like that. It started bleeding a little bit into the sexual ethics, right? So I eventually realized, I remember having a conversation with my friend, and he was like very surprised about it. And I was like, yeah, like hookup culture is really bad. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, but I wouldn't really, obviously, I didn't believe in something like sin. So I was just like, it can spread a lot of diseases, and it could result in a lot of violence or rapes or whatever. And he's like, you know what, like that's a step forward, right? That's you're looking, because I was looking more at the what I would call bad effects of all these other things I would support.
But you were believing this at this time,
I wasn't
starting to
believing
believe
what,
that
believing what.
the negative effects of the hookup culture.
Right, yeah, I was,
Oh,
yeah, which
oh,
again is
good.
very prevalent in like Hispanic. I mean, it's in young America a lot, but especially in Hispanic culture, very prevalent. And so I was like, yeah, starting to be convinced. I was like, yeah, it's not good. I wouldn't want my daughter doing that, this and that. Yeah, it was started changing my mind on a lot of things.
Good.
Eventually, I changed my mind on abortion. But I think before that, changed my mind on abortion and then like gay marriage. Because at first I was like, yeah, just kind of let people do. I think I was more libertarian. I wasn't like pro gay or anything. I wasn't
Right.
like super supportive of this stuff, but I was more libertarian. Just like, why do you care what people are doing?
Right.
Um, and really that's harder to let go of, because that requires you to understand like there's a things are intrinsically wrong. Some things are intrinsically right, right? It's not just you're not just looking at the world through what's the word, like
Indifferentism,
no, but when you do
apathy.
I'm losing when you do things for the end that they're ordered to, right? So like what's it called? The world, I'm it's slipping through my mind. The worldview where you basically you look at everything and you see what's going to be the best result, and it doesn't matter what the means are, but you just you choose not coming to your mind. It's not coming to my mind right now. I
It's
don't know
not
why.
coming to mind either. I'm sorry.
But all good. But I was very indifferent, right? And I kind of just would just be fine with stuff like that. But eventually I realized, like, yeah, this is intrinsically wrong. This is not what sex is for, even from the natural law. And I didn't want
Oh,
to
was it utilitarianism?
Yes, yeah, there we go. Yeah. So I mean, I was very open to everything as long as it didn't cause, short-term
Yeah.
bad effects, right? Which even there's a lot of bad effects, but whatever. And then I think the last thing really to go for me that I convinced my mind on was abortion. Really, abortion was the last, and then like a week later, I like started reading the Bible and stuff like that. So,
Wow.
but that took 2 years in college for me to really make slowly change my mind on things. Be more. It wasn't so much that I like would change my mind on an issue, but I would just slowly soften and slowly soften and open up to being open. Begin to open up to being wrong. Until eventually I would change my mind on something, and like a few months back later, I'd like change my mind on another thing. But it really took
Yeah.
2 years for me to get there. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm intrigued here because I think some of this might have to do with your political ideologies coming into college. My question for you is, being an atheist, a secular atheist or whatever, it sounds like you had some sort of political bent. You were talking that you're, pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, et cetera, et cetera. Why were you those things? Was it just you were going along with the secular crowd and the media, or I mean, because those are important issues, that social ethical issues that you're bringing into um, this situation with these two Christian roommates of yours. How did you how did you shape your initial political ideology, and then how did that come into play with you talking to these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like some sort of activist, and I wasn't like pushing for these things. So I didn't like push for abortion or whatever. I was just kind of like let people. I didn't see at the time I didn't see the fetus or the zygote as like a human being, and obviously I would have told you like no at like 9 months, 8 months. But earlier on, right, I didn't really recognize it as a human being, or maybe if I even did at some point, I think I would have just been like, yeah, the the end justify the means. So if the woman can get a better life out of it, stuff like that. But I wasn't like pushing for that actively. When it comes to stuff like, homosexuality, like I already said, I was more libertarian rather than actually wanting, or I wasn't like going out and promoting this stuff, or I wasn't whatever. But really, again, I bought into the left leaning media, and I thought that there really were people out there who had evil intentions to really harm, gay people or whatever. So I think it was a little emotional as well. Not because I had a soft spot for homosexuality or whatever, and people who engage in that, but as a libertarian, I just kind of wanted everyone to chill out in the country, right? So I
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't so I wasn't like hard. I wasn't like far left. I was just like
Okay.
which sadly many conservatives today would just be like, yeah, if two men want to get married, how does that affect me? That was more of my mentality, really. I wasn't actively trying to advocate for this stuff. But I think the reason I adopted it is just because, like I said, since after I was 10, especially living in Hispanic culture, Hispanic family, which a lot of them are just not really close to God. That's just kind of what you're fed, like this very laid back mentality of follow your passions and do what makes you feel good right now. And if some people are different than you, but they want to follow their passions, if it doesn't affect you, so be it. So that's just kind of what I naturally adopted. But again, before college, I wasn't really thinking about stuff like that.
Sure. But so this is what got the conversation started with your two roommates. Was it the social ethical problems and like the political ideologies? Is that kind of what served as a catalyst?
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
they were hardline no. They weren't just saying like, "Oh, go do what you want." Because I think to some things, I'm pretty sure to some, yeah, like looking back now, even early on, I think I would have just been like, "No, I personally don't like this stuff." Maybe like abortion, maybe like two men going and getting married. Like I might make me feel uncomfortable, but I would just be like, who am I to say no to these? Why does my opinion get to affect some other
Right.
people and anything, not just those issues? But those are obviously very prevalent ones in that young people talk about in politics. So seeing my Christian roommates say like hardline, like no, this is not acceptable at all. Um, just kind of sparked debate and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that was for 2 years. Slowly and slowly, I started changing my mind on things, and it wasn't really until it was like summer going into my third year of college that I really was like pretty much I let go. I had changed my mind on pretty much everything, and that was like when I picked up a Bible for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
How interesting in God's providence that he allowed you to experience what you did growing up, Jehovah's Witness, and then atheist, and then just to be in that secular culture in high school, right? And then boom, you have two wonderful Christian roommates who are not lukewarm and that are
Right.
firm in their stances. I mean, that's God. I mean, is that not God working? I mean, he's literally looking at you in your heart, you alone individually, and saying, Kevin, I love you. I want you to come to me. And this is how he's doing it, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't doubt it for a second.
Wow. Wow. So, okay. This is interesting. You have two roommates. So there are three of you. You're in college. One's an evangelical Christian, the other's an Catholic Christian. And like you were saying, they're both pretty adamant on kind of like the social ethical issues, abortion and IVF or whatever. And so kind of tell us, what did it become polarizing, the fact that one's evangelical, one's Catholic, and both of them are witnessing? How did the dialogue get started? What did they press you on? Like, was there any doctrine, theology, philosophy? How did that all start and then kind of work out?
I mean, kind of already talked about it, but like I said, the evangelical didn't really he didn't provide me like some logical that many like logical arguments and guide me through my reasoning. That was more of the Catholic, but the evangelical was nevertheless there to serve as a witness of joy and being willing to be my friend, a good friend, regardless of our disagreements, which was huge for me. Especially when you have the media telling you like, oh, conservatives or whatever, they hate you or uh whatever. So but yeah, I mean, I don't really remember the specifics of exactly what arguments were brought up or whatever. Um, I can't really say much more there because it's. I remember that we talked about issues. I just don't remember exactly the specifics of what was brought up.
Sure, sure, sure. So, what started you to at least entertain the idea of looking into Christianity and in, specifically Catholicism. What happened there?
So it really happened within like maybe like a few weeks. I was staying at a hotel room during the summer, and a lot of hotel rooms in America thankfully have a Bible in every
The
room.
Gideon Bible, yep.
So I was staying in the hotel room for a few weeks. I was doing some sort of internship, and basically, at this time, like I said, I've already changed my mind on a lot of things, but I was more like a conservative atheist, right? I was a secular conservative, I would call myself. This is my second year. This is after my second year in college, so it's summer going into my third year in college. And I see this Bible, and there's this strong, internal motion that I'm experiencing of just, to pick up this Bible and read it.
St.
It's like
Augustine. I'm sorry.
it's
Sorry.
like yeah, it's like I am I've I knew to myself I knew within myself that I've come all this way, and it's like, well, what am I going to, right? Like, I'm like, am I just like, okay, is this just a story where you change your mind on all these points, and you change your opinion on a lot of things, but really I wasn't a new person, right? I was a person who changed my mind on a lot of things. What is the final end for all of this? And the Bible was there in front of me, just kind of like speaking to me. I wasn't hearing words or anything, but it was just kind of drawing me towards it. And so I just kind of kept on with my days while still in this hotel. I was there for a while. I was there for like 2 or 3 weeks, and eventually, and while I was there, it's when I officially, became convinced that abortion was wrong. Abortion is wrong, always wrong. Because before that, I would have been like, yeah, 7 8 months, that's wrong, whatever, don't do it. But earlier on, I would have been like, yeah, do what you got to do. But that's when I really became convinced, like, there's no way that you can justify this at all. There's no way you can justify abortion from the first instant of conception, right? Which is really interesting because I don't talk to a lot of atheists, but when I do, I very rarely I do bring up the fact, like, when I technically speaking, when I was atheist, I was still anti-abortion. Like, I didn't change my stance on abortion because I became Christian. I I,
Interesting.
I became anti-abortion, like, while I was still not practicing, not believing or anything. So
Natural
there,
law kicking in.
Right. So during those 3 weeks, really, I started feeling this draw to read the Bible. I had an opportunity during those 3 weeks to make a really long drive, so I was listening to, like, I think it was, like, Genesis or something, on Spotify. But the first time I was gonna pick it up, I texted my friends, my 2 friends, actually. We had a group chat. We weren't roommates anymore for a while. We were only really roommates for, like, the first semester and whatnot, for second semester. But we still had a group chat. We were still friends, obviously. And I texted them like, "Hey guys, I kind of want to read the Bible, right? Like, what should I read?" And they both told me, like, the Gospel, start with Mark, very short, very easy. And so I start with Mark. I don't remember much, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say like I had this profound experience about like the words of Jesus speaking to me. That's fine. Plenty of people have that. That wasn't so much for me. But I do remember there were plenty of things I didn't understand. And thankfully, by God's grace, I didn't just close the Bible and be like, yeah, I was my initial convictions were right. This is nonsense, whatever. Like, I just kind of stuck with it. It was like I was like in a, I don't know if you've ever been to like a water park or something, but they have these rivers that kind of have a current, and you just
Yeah.
kind of lay back on your raft, and the
Yeah.
current takes you where it wants to take you.
Lazy river.
Lazy river, right? Like, that's just kind of how I felt. Like, I knew I was going somewhere. I wasn't there yet, and whatever difficulty or whatever misunderstanding I might have now, like, it's going to get resolved. It's fine, right? Like, I had this trust in God, even though I didn't really know Him yet, even though I didn't really understand where I was going. It's really it's undeniable to me that getting a little more theological, that God's grace really does liberate the will efficaciously. I am a strong believer of predestination, and St. Thomas Aquinas's doctrine of efficacious grace, the Thomistic doctrine of efficacious grace, which really infallibly, moves the will to cooperate with God, but in a free way. So I really
Mhm.
just felt like I was in like this river, and I would, I had this internship, so I would like go do the internship thing and like come back and like listen to the Bible or read the Bible, or do research. I think I even like discovered the Thomistic Institute videos where they have like the friars talking
Oh yeah.
about like the Eucharist or stuff like that at this time. Um, so I guess immediately I was just kind of, going Catholic too. So that's something else we could talk about. But it's something I can't really remember much. I'm going to be honest with you. I can't say I had this one unique experience where, like, reading Christ's word, they were like speaking to me, this and that. But it was a more holistic, very smooth and very spiritual experience. of like, I am now in safe hands type of thing.
Wow. You know, the grace that you received at that time you were reading the Gospel of Mark, you were getting confused. Uh, and I don't know how you felt at that moment, but what a grace to still remain open and vulnerable and not just give up. Because, I mean, we obviously know of how many people, you know, when they actually give it a shot and then their first obstacle or stumbling block or whatever's confusing, and then they just retract. They're done. You know what I mean? So, wow, good for you, man. And yeah, I think that has to do with a lot with predestination and efficacious grace. You know, yeah, the efficacious grace doesn't violate our will; it actually brings our will to more of a free uh, disposition than it
Yeah.
was before.
Yeah, that was also the week that I actually, um, there's a particular sin against purity that several young men struggle against. And that week I also just be like realized, because this is another thing, I won't talk about this too much, but like I wasn't naive or stupid. Like I didn't like Christianity beforehand, and maybe not that I hated it, but I just did not want anything to do with it. But I was never one of those naive people where it's like if you would have shown me like a more like modern liberal, church or whatever, with like, I don't know, pastors wearing like rainbow whatever stoles or whatever, I would have told you like, yeah, they're not doing Christianity right.
Right,
Like
right.
I wasn't for Christianity, but I wasn't
Yeah,
retarded. Like I wasn't stupid. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I know what Christianity is supposed to be.
yeah.
Um, so the second I realized like, oh, I am going down this route, after years, I want to say, let's see, I would have been a decade, really. After a decade of struggling against that certain sin of against purity that a lot of young men struggle against, I just made a decision by God's grace, obviously, like I'm not going to do this anymore.
Mhm.
And like that was, it's not just I'm not going to do this anymore. It's like from one day to the next, I just, it was a total change of mind, total change of will, to just not do that anymore. Thankfully, I haven't done that anymore by God's grace. And I don't know any other better miracle than that, really. A decade of struggling against that sin against purity. And when I say struggle, I don't mean that I was pushing back, right? But engaging in that sin against purity to just one day realize, like, I'm not stupid. I know that I'm not going to continue this and be a Christian, so I'm just going to stop. It's incompatible. It's incoherent. So that was also another a great thing there. But yeah, I guess
Yeah.
maybe we could talk about why Catholicism and not Protestants. I don't know if you want to talk about anything else, but
Yeah, yeah. Real quick, and then I'll ask you about that. But I share a similar conversion story with you and Saint Augustine. You know, we both struggled
yeah,
with impurity. I mean, whatever, fornication and the like. And I just when you said you pulled open that Bible in that hotel room, and
mhm,
then now you made this firm resolution because I know Saint Augustine said not now but later, but you
right,
made that firm resolution. In my humble opinion, this is just how I'm taking it, but God calls all of us, to abandon ourselves and to actually give our wills to him, literally. Not just like where it ebbs and flows and it vacillates, but permanently. And I know it's hard. It's like one of the hardest things to do in life, but I feel like in that moment you maybe gave God your will in that sense, right? Like, no, with your grace, I'm not going to go back to that lifestyle. I'm not going to, embrace that vice anymore. That's what God wants. And like St. Augustine, right? He gave that up for good. He didn't go, and not to my knowledge, he didn't go back to that lifestyle. You
right,
know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I
So,
don't think I had a notion of grace at the time, but looking back, I can explain my experience with my theological knowledge that, yeah, that was through grace. But at the time, I myself just like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. But looking back, that's impossible. You don't go 10 years doing it, engaging
right,
in this frequently, many times a week. And again, it's the whole culture that you grew up with. It's just normalized. It's just so um normal for in that culture, especially in high school, public high school, whatever.
right. It was a miracle. It was just
It's
flat
really
out a
impossible
miracle.
to just stop doing that
Hmm.
and not really not struggle against doing that for a while. So really, I look back and I explain that through grace alone, really.
Yeah. Thanks be to God, man. It's
Yeah.
just pure gratitude for
Amen.
that. Yeah. So, all right. So now we're at the point. Okay, you're reading the Bible. You're listening to Genesis. I think you said listening or reading, and then the Thomistic Institute. Okay. So, and then obviously, thanks be to God, this divine intervention of giving your will to God and not engaging in this vice. Okay, now what? Where does the discernment go? And are you starting to pray? Are you still talking to other people? What's going on now?
Yeah, so I was very excited about eventually, after a few weeks, I eventually, left that hotel that I was staying at, and I went back to college campus, was engaging with some people, and I was like, just talking to a lot of Christians, uh, which was very weird for some people because obviously not everybody there at college was Christian, so some of them were just not used to talking about their faith and so openly in public in front of other non Christians. But I was just asking a bunch of questions about this or that. And I asked my Catholic friend, my evangelical friend, I think he was like Baptist or something. I think he actually doesn't really like the whole denominationalism thing. So
Mhm.
that's how non-denominational he is, that he doesn't like denominations. You would just ask him, and we have this joke because he would just say, "Oh, I'm just Christian. I'm just Christian."
Yeah.
I mean, so really
Yeah.
I didn't really see him as somewhere to go to investigate Protestantism. So I went to my Catholic friend, right? And I also just went online and see what I could discover. And I just started talking to my Catholic friend. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is I got a very unique opportunity to actually meet one of the Catholic priests that was like assigned to the Catholic to the not to the Catholic to the college, to the campus. And so we got to talk for a bit. I kind of asked him questions about Protestantism, questions about Catholicism, was doing some more research. Um, Also, another interesting point is like immediately I got a lot of pushback from friends who were Christian back home, not in college, who were Protestant. They were like not for me, aiming
Oh,
towards
no.
Catholicism. So maybe there's a little talk to be had about that. But I think Catholicism just presented itself to me as the solution to exactly what um, I was coming from, right? I realized that I was coming from this darkened world of sin. I realized also that I was very blind to what I was engaging in because, again, I was always very respectful, very kind. My professors, my superiors, like they always had very good things to say about me. So I would have thought I always thought I was a good person.
Mhm.
But coming from this kingdom of darkness into the light of Christ, I real like it just Catholicism made so much sense from the liturgy. The liturgy is a nice part, right? It's not the essential reason, right? But just the role of Christ's of the magisterium's teaching office around the entire world, um, that Christ commissioned to spread the gospel and not just spread the good news, as in your sins are forgiven if you believe in Christ, but the fact that Christ has come so that you may have life and have it more abundantly, right? So the seven sacraments, you don't just have the forgiveness of sins in baptism, and you're not just nourished spiritually in the Eucharist, but your matrimony, and I wasn't married at the time, obviously, but like your matrimony is also nourished with life. And even after baptism, you're strengthened again by confirmation. And are you sick? Well, you also have spiritual, strengthening through the anointing of the sick. What am I missing? Yeah, I mean priests, right? They also have grace in their sacrament of holy orders, which looking back, right, Saint Thomas Aquinas just basically says, how can we interpret that? Why are there seven sacraments? Well, there seems to be a sacrament for every stage of the spiritual life, right? You have birth, nourishment, adulthood, which is confirmation, right? If you're sick, you have that. The church is a society, so you either have heads of family, so husband and wife, they're going to need grace, or you have judges, teachers, rulers, right, which are the priests, the bishops, whatever. They're also going to have their own grace. So really, the entire church as a society has grace flowing here and flowing there. And that was just I couldn't explain it at the time with words. I was a new Christian. What did I know? But it's like you know that something is right. You know that something makes sense, even if you don't yet have the words for it. That was a big capture point for me. Which you can also ask why not orthodoxy, which is another interesting story. I could tell it really briefly. I tell it all the time. I knew that there was so I was moving towards Catholicism, right? I wasn't like going to classes yet, but I was just kind of investigating. At least I don't think I was going to RCIA classes yet. And I knew there was such a thing as a pope, right? I had no idea. I really forget exactly what I knew, but I did not know anything about it. I didn't know like the whole common, passage about Matthew 16 and on this rock I will build my church. I didn't really know the claims. I don't think I knew the claims about like, oh, Peter was the first pope, Saint Peter. So I was reading through Matthew. I had read through Mark at this point. I read through Genesis, read through Exodus. Really bad decision to. I should listen to my friends and just read through the Gospels first. But I was like, what do they know? I'm gonna go read. I read Mark and I was go read Genesis, but horrible decision. I'm surprised I didn't like apostatize after I read Leviticus, or started reading Leviticus. But anyway, I'm reading through Matthew for the first time, and I get to Matthew 16, and at this point, I have a notion of what the church is. She's all around the world. She has always existed since the time of Christ. She's supposed to exist until the consummation of the age. I wouldn't have described it that way, but I had this general idea of what the church is, right? And I know that there's some pope, right? So I read Matthew 16. I see that Jesus is giving Saint Peter, right, this perpetual authority because the gates of hell never prevailing against the church. Peter died in the first century.
Right.
So I mean that and Saint Augustine talks about this. Saint Thomas Aquinas talks about this. Whenever these promises are made to the apostles, to the temporal rulers, right? But the promises are made forever, or for all eternity, or to the end of the age. The promises apply to their successors, right? Those who are going to take their roles. You don't tell Saint Peter or the apostles like, hey, you're going to rule the church forever. It's like, I'm going to die in like 60
Yeah.
years. Right? So what
I
does
will
that
be
mean?
with you till the end of the age until you die.
Right. So I see Jesus giving Saint Peter this authority. He's building, and I also didn't even know that Peter meant rock because I just read I am Peter and on this rock. So that was a little awkward for me, but nevertheless, it's inescapable. It's inescapable that verse is giving Saint Peter this authority, and obviously Saint Peter died in the first century. I knew the Bible was 2,000 years old, guys. Come on. So I run to my friend's room. We're not roommates anymore, obviously. This is my third year in college now, but we're still friends. We're living close to each other and in the hallway, whatever. And I run to his room and I'm like, because I got every time I understood a passage in the Bible, not just this, I would be proud, or I'd be like, I wanted my friend to be proud of me. So I'm like, hey, is this what this means? So I ran to my friend's room. I'm like, is this about the Pope? Right. And my friend was like, exactly. He's like, we were talking about it. Like, well, I can't understand how Protestants don't see it, whatever. But really that was another moment for me where it's like, it just makes so much sense. Right. God has always, looking back at salvation history, there's always been a temporal head, right? In God's people,
Yep.
whether it be Abraham, whether it be Moses, whether it be Joshua, whether it be, the high priest or the king, the judges, right? There's always been a temporal head in the church. It's like, well, Christ is the head. Well, yeah, but he's not on earth, right? Um, and looking back now again, I wouldn't have explained it with such precision as I could now, reading through magisteriology and whatnot. But it just made sense that if you're gonna have this eternal, or not eternal, but a church that's going to last until the end of the age, throughout the entire world, it's going to teach all nations forever. And obviously there's going to be disagreements among sinners, right? You can just appeal to the next level until you can't anymore, right? It's not like if Jesus was still here on earth, he could come down and correct us, but
Right.
he's not here on earth. So there's a final point of decision, a final point of judgment, within the church. It just made so much sense. So that's what did it for me. And you don't have to look into papal history. You don't have to look into you don't have to be an expert in early church history. Like, I'm sorry, but Matthew 16, also John 21 was also very interesting for me. That just kind of makes it very clear. Like, I think Jesus just kind of wanted us to know we're in the right place without, the common man who's a farmer who doesn't have time to read theology books can read those verses and realize, like, yeah, I should probably be in communion with St. Peter. So, and again, I wouldn't have described it so precise back then at all, but that was the general notion that I had as a baby Christian. Yeah, I don't know if you want to. I've been talking for a while, so I don't know if you want to talk.
Yeah. So would you say that, again, I know it's probably a combination of things. I don't want to reduce it to you reading Matthew 16, but would you say reading Matthew 16 and then coming to the conclusion that, oh, is this about the Pope? And then your friends confirming that's probably what deterred you from going to Eastern Orthodoxy, or at least looking further into Eastern Orthodoxy?
So I didn't really know what. So it's kind of funny, but I didn't even know what Eastern Orthodoxy was at the time. I think this was
Oh,
only
okay.
like a month or a month and a half, maybe, after that internship in the summer. And I only knew of Catholicism and Protestantism.
Okay.
And so Protestantism, obviously, in the Western world is very popular. So I knew it existed, not just because I had friends who were Protestant, but because I experienced it before, like seen it before. But I had no idea what Eastern Orthodoxy was. So
Okay.
I wasn't like saying like, oh, this is a reason to not go Eastern Orthodoxy, which in a sense, this isn't maybe a perfect argument, but it does make you realize, the fact that we are in America and many people, not everybody, but many people don't know what it is. It's like,
Yes.
it's I'm sure I could flesh it out a little better. That's not what the point of this interview is.
I know, but
Right?
I've made a video on this, Kevin, and I won't say
Really.
anything, but yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, that is looking back, that is something, right? I think I
Yeah.
discovered it eventually, like a month later or so, because one of our friends was Eastern Orthodox there, and yeah, and he's a great guy, I love him, but it's just very unknown to a lot of people. So,
But the Matthew 16 passage, is that maybe what deterred you from going to looking into Protestantism?
I mean, I would say early on I was reading the Bible, I didn't know anything, so like
Oh, okay.
I had very simple arguments, uh, arguments, not really arguments. I had very simple convictions of why of why go Catholic. I mean, like this is Jesus. He promised his church will endure forever and that it's going to have certain mark. Again, I would not be using this language back then. I'm not
Right,
saying that,
right.
but this was a very vague way of me thinking. Right, it has these certain marks of holiness, not just holiness, but also heroic holiness. So I would look like Saint John the Baptist, right? Saint Joseph. Um, and you look and you learn about Saint Francis of Assisi, you learn about Saint Dominic, you learn about Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint Therese of Lisieux, right? That is the only church really looking across the world that has. I'm not saying that Protestants don't have heroes or that
Right.
Orthodox don't have heroes, but consistently around the entire world. For some reason, maybe a lot of in Italy, but that's another story. But generally speaking, you have heroic saints, right, that do all these great things, which is again another sign of another mark of the true church. Um, I'm sorry. I know I'm an apologist today, apologist, and I like to make videos about theology and defend the Catholic faith, but the Christ did not come to make us like theologians in and of ourselves. Like he came to bring salvation and a kingdom and grace. And it's really sufficient for the common man to be able to read the Bible, look out across the world. I mean, that's kind of what St. John Chrysostom says too. Like read the Bible, look around the world, and what church embodies the church that Christ established. Um, I had no idea what the Orthodox Church was at the time, and I know that there are, obviously now there are more confessional Protestants who are more serious about Christian history and tradition for sure. But at the time, all I really knew, at least predominantly before I like encountered other people like Gavin Orland or whatever, it was just more like low church evangelical. It's like, yeah, that doesn't look like Christ's kingdom on earth. I'm not saying that there's no grace there, but it doesn't look like Christ's kingdom all around the world. At least at the time, it was very simple decision for me. Eventually I started, discovering more, advanced and traditional Protestant traditions, but that's another story.
Yeah. So, okay. So Eastern Orthodoxy, don't know much about it. Protestantism, kind of likewise. So where are we going now? So you were, doing all these things. I mean, are you looking into OCIA? Are you
Yeah,
still
eventually
studying?
I joined pretty quickly as soon as they started. So
Oh, wow. Really? Okay. So how long from your serious inquiry, right? I mean, when you were really, okay, Catholicism, Matthew 16, the Pope, how long from then until OCIA, would you say?
I think it would have been like maybe like a month and a half.
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's awesome. Like, why beat around the bush? Why delay the inevitable, right? Let's
Yeah.
get this going. I want confirmation. I want the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
your baptism. Now, you were a Jehovah's Witness, so you were quote unquote baptized, at least in the ritual
No,
sense of the word.
I
Oh,
never received the Jehovah's Witness baptism. What ended up happening was that I was baptized again in college, but I didn't know that I didn't know. So I thought that was my first baptism, but I recently found out a few months ago. And again, this is just the problem with Hispanic culture. That I was actually baptized Catholic as a baby, uh, back in Cuba, my home country. So when I was born, and I just was looking through old photos, and I was around my family and my mom, and I was like, "Mom, what's this?" And she's like, "Well, that's your baptism when you're a baby." And it's like very clearly there's a priest there in his vestments, and there's a cross behind him, a crucifix behind him, or whatever, a statue of Mary. So it's like very clearly not some Jehovah. I mean, I don't even think they baptize babies, but yeah, I don't. Yeah, they don't baptize babies. But and I'm like, why didn't you ever tell me? And she's like, I didn't know that you couldn't repeat it or whatever. I thought you had to do it again. So that whole time like it never occurred to her, and I would have just thought, like in my mind I was like, yeah, of course I wasn't baptized. My mom never told me about it growing up, but in her mind it never occurred to her like to tell me, hey, you're already baptized, because they didn't even know that like that you couldn't repeat it or whatever.
mhm.
So I guess my baptism wasn't really in college, but my confirmation was, and my first communion obviously was. So that was interesting to find out a few months ago, but yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. All right, so you're in OCIA. Did it take you 2 or 3 times or just one?
Just one, yeah, just one.
Yep. Some people it takes like 2 or 3 times. Okay, so you're in OCIA, you're learning, everything's going well, I'm assuming. Were there any obstacles, stumbling blocks, problems?
No, I mean, as a new convert, I think there's an abundance of grace that, God really gave me to overcome my sinful past, to overcome any difficulties or maybe doubts that I might have had in the Catholic faith, to really just have faith, hope, and charity. Faith in what the church proposes for belief, as revealed by God, even if you don't understand it now, or maybe you don't even understand it in this life. Hope, looking forward to receive the grace of the sacraments, and love for God, to thank him for rescuing me from the kingdom of darkness, and bringing me to the light of Christ.
Yeah, amen. Wow, thanks be to God. So, you've been a Catholic for how long now? Since your confirmation?
Several years, a few years, yeah. I don't
Okay.
want people to know exactly my entire timeline so they can go
Oh,
finding me
I'm so
online
yeah,
and
I'm
and
sorry.
where.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get it, get it. I don't give too many details, so
Okay.
but, I'm not too hard to find, but yeah, it's a few years now, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what's your favorite thing about being a Catholic?
Uh, Jesus, honestly. Yeah, Jesus is amazing. He is always good when we are not good, and always faithful, and I know we're not the only ones that have Jesus, but everything that the church teaches about Jesus, the mystical tradition, just this seeing Jesus as not only God and Lord, but true friendship with Him, is really the best thing, I think. Is something that you know you walk by people in the street every single day and they have no idea what they're missing out on. Unfortunately, it should give you should be overflowing with joy to want to spread that with other people, of what they can possess, especially in the Eucharist. And it's a bummer that I don't feel that every single day to want to spread that. But when I do, when I'm able to sit down in silence, before receiving communion, and receiving Jesus and the Holy Eucharist, like, that is heaven on earth.
Amen. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your conversion, or would you like to talk about your channel a little bit?
Yeah. So eventually, after, I think I want to say it was maybe like after a year of serious studying, I wanted to make like a presentation for my friends who were like Protestant, and I uploaded, and I was like, well, they couldn't make it was a presentation on Mary, right? And they couldn't make it. So a few of them couldn't make it to the presentation, so I was like, oh, I'll just record it and put it on YouTube, I guess. But I made it public, and I got a bunch of views. It wasn't too many, but for a new channel, like 1,000 or something, it was like a lot
That's
of views.
good, man, for a new
Yeah, yeah.
channel.
Yeah, and then they watched it and whatever, and I was like, I don't know, I feel like making another video. I forgot exactly what it was on, but I made another video and that got some more views, and I just took off from there. But I have a YouTube channel now. It's called Since 33 AD. I mean, I assume many people may be watching already. They probably clicked because they were interested. A lot of people have been asking for my conversion story for a while now.
I
Um,
feel so honored
Oh, yeah.
to be doing
Yeah,
this with you.
thank you for having me.
Of
And,
course.
eventually I started really digging deeper into, like, traditional Protestantism, a little bit into Eastern Orthodoxy, which maybe I'll get more into in the next coming months, but not really what I'm mostly interested in, which is it's another conversation of why, but that's not really relevant right now. But yeah, I started digging deeper into like traditional Protestantism, and the reasons for I guess we could say the Protestant schism, and their confessions of faith or theologians, trying to compare what they say to maybe the church fathers, or what our theologians say. And I realize I'm not an expert on every topic by any means at all. Very few topics that I feel confident really like speaking on, and even then, but I feel like I've been able to, by God's grace, bring some good stuff to the table. I
Mhm.
I often receive thanks from many Protestants, saying thank you for not straw manning us, or for
Y
reading our theological, our confessions, or our authors, for trying to, and actually understanding what we believe, what we teach, for not saying we believe works are not necessary or whatever, or we don't believe the Eucharist is just symbolic, basic stuff like that, but sometimes
Mhm.
even more advanced. Um, to the point where it's to the point where you sometimes have jokes where Protestants will be like every Lutheran's worst nightmare, whatever. or sometimes you really do have like I've had Protestants who are they're not low church evangelicals, they are Lutherans, Reform, who are like, hey, good video, like this was a challenge, this was a genuinely challenging thing for me to sit through and try to sit through and think through, and I've been thinking about it for a while and this and that. Or the most rewarding thing is really having Catholics, saying like, you strengthened my faith. You've helped me come. I think one or maybe one or two have even said like, I wasn't the reason that they came back to the church, but I was one of the reasons, that helped them come back. And really, it's been back. I've been going back and forth. Like, why do I have my channel? Why am I doing this? Is this something that God really wants me to have? Because it just kind of took off without me praying about it before. I uploaded one presentation for my friends, and from there, I just decided to start making videos. But whenever I see comments like that, I realize, as long as I know what I'm talking about, if I do good research and I pray about it, which is something I need to do more, then I think I'm safe for now. I don't really know where I want to take this right now, but from the comments I get, especially from Catholics who had maybe were struggling with some things, it's helping in some way. So if that's what God wants to use me for now, then I think that's His will, at least right now. So
Yeah, I can attest to that. And Kevin, if we help convert or save one soul, that's all that matters.
yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
That's
Just
true.
one. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us, because, apologetics, theology, catechesis, it's all important. It's all needed. But at the end, it should always serve, obviously, the glory of God. But
And the salvation of souls.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, man, I really appreciate you being transparent with us, open with us about your struggles, your conversion, and what you're doing now as a Catholic apologist trying to evangelize, because the church is evangelism itself, So
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that Pope Leo really likes, fortunately. But yeah, I guess moving forward, I want to consider, I don't know, I considered like making a Spanish YouTube channel for a while to try to, reach out to like the Hispanic community a little more and get them more serious about the faith. But I don't know if that's the best route to go, but eventually I got to start getting serious about, going back to where I came from, the Hispanic community in general, and those who need Christ, because like I said, it's very cultural, very low level. Yeah, we're Catholic, but
right.
a lot of those people, unfortunately, are the reason that you see like national surveys of like this percent of Catholics don't believe in the Eucharist, or this
Yeah.
percent of Catholics use contraception.
Yeah.
When really those people who are doing those bad things, they just say they're Catholic. They haven't gone to mass in years, stuff like that. But they're gonna say they're Catholic because it's just the way they grew up, whatever. So if we can go back to those people and kind of get them serious about loving Jesus again, like that'd be huge. But I don't know yet what's the best way to go about that.
Yeah, that's cool that you're open to it and thinking about it. Yeah, obviously just pray about it. You never know. It's kind of funny. One day, this was months ago, one day I wake up and there's this video of me talking in Spanish. One of my videos, right? Someone took it, ripped it, and had me speaking Spanish. And it got tens of thousands of views. I'm like, what's going on here? Well, this Spanish YouTuber, Catholic, right, has a channel, puts out content, and he came across my video and he liked it and he ripped it, but he put all my words in Spanish. But I was cool with it because it got me like, I don't know, 3,000 subscribers.
Oh wow.
So yeah, Dios de Salve or something, like I can't remember that. It's something like Dios de Salve or something. Yeah. But yeah, they're out there, just probably not a lot of them. So maybe that is for you. I didn't know you spoke fluent Spanish.
I do, yeah.
Wow. Muy bien.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Amazing. Welcome home, Kevin. You're home and God loves you and wants to keep you here. And yeah, thanks for sharing your testimony and your story. Hope it edifies other people.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course.